And when I tried football, like I said, I was 15 years old and I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I feel like as a kid, when you try a bunch of different sport, when you find one that you really feel like you belong to, it's way easier to face adversity, and when things don't go the way you want, you're like, okay, let's remember why I picked this sport in the first place.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to another great episode of Let's Move Canada podcast. We're your hosts, Dana and Luigi with the Canadian Health and Fitness Institute. And on today's episode of Let's Move Canada, we will talk with Canadian former NFL player and currently trained medical doctor Laurent Duvernay-Tardif about what's inspired him to go pro and what being healthy means to him. And before we introduce Laurent, let me start by saying that this podcast is brought to you by the Canadian Health and Fitness Institute, whose mission is to make Canada the fittest nation on earth by 2030. And to this end, of course, our podcast aims to raise awareness about physical and mental health. And now, for the guest of the day, Laurent. So, Laurent Tardif Duvernay is an amazing individual who seamlessly blends athletic excellence and medical expertise. So, as mentioned earlier, Laurent is a Canadian former NFL player who helped the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl 54. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he put his football career on hold to work on the front lines in Quebec long-term care facility. So his dedication to both sport and public health has earned him numerous accolades and our deepest admirations. Laurent, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for
Hey,
being
hey,
here.
hey, that's a great intro. Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you too. We're so happy you're here. So our first question for you is to tell us a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, were you active as a child, what sports you played, that kind of thing.
Actually, I grew up on the South Shore of Montreal as a French Canadian, speaking French at home. And my parents were really big into cross-country skiing and sailing, which are kind of atypical sports. And I kind of got into football around 15 years old, but growing up, it was like all about trying different sports. Like every fall, it was like, do you play soccer? Do you play basketball? Do you play badminton? And my parents were really big on trying to make me try different things. And when I tried football, like I said, I was 15 years old and I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I feel like as a kid, when you try a bunch of different sport, when you find one that you really feel like you belong to, it's way easier to face adversity, and when things don't go the way you want, you're like, okay, let's remember why I picked this sport in the first place. And I think that had a really big impact on me throughout my career as a football player because things don't necessarily go the way you want. Sometimes you get injured, you have a counter performance. It's always good to remind yourself like why you're playing the sport you're playing. And my parents play a big role in helping me kind of like be exposed to different things.
No, I love that. So what I'm hearing a lot of is once you connect to something and you know that it's part of your journey, those adversities also become part of the journey. It feels like it's the journey and not necessarily just something to stop at, right? So no,
Yeah, no,
that's a great
for,
point.
for sure. And also, like, you got to remember that, yes, you're an athlete, but when you're a kid, you're most of all a student athlete, and student
Mhm.
comes before athlete in the word student athlete. And there's a reason for that. You're always like one twisted ankle, an injury, getting cut from a team, away from getting away from your sports, basically. So,
Yeah.
so having a good plan A is critical. And I feel like with football, it ties so well with school, whether it's high school or college or even in the NFL. Like in Kansas City, we
Hmm.
had half of the guys going back to do classes during the off season. So, yeah, for football, for me, it's like the ultimate team sport, but it's also like a sport that ties really well with academics, which is also really important.
And how would you say was your academic performance during that time, right? Like so it sounds like you were inspired by your parents to try different sports and to go into that route. But as you mentioned, you're also a student. If anything, you're a student first at that time, right? So what did being a student look like outside of sport?
Well, it varies a lot. It varied a lot. When I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, the transition towards middle school and high school was kind of really challenging for me. I was a little distracted. I was asking a lot of questions. I had a lot of energy as a kid, and honestly, I think I was I was playing football initially more to challenge my excessive energy than because I
Mm.
really enjoy football. Uh, and as I grew up, I realized that, okay, there's a way I can actually funnel that energy into trying to learn more, asking better questions, focusing more on my grades. And slowly but surely, I started having interest towards science in general. And initially, I wanted to become an engineer. And then I realized that there was actually a lot of computer work as an engineer, and I enjoyed the human interaction a lot. And
Mm.
medicine was kind of the perfect balance I found between pure science. You got the anatomy, the physiology, the biochemistry, but you also have human science because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, you interact with a person. And even though you have a pathology, you got to come up with the right treatment plan. And that's what makes medicine kind of an art to me. And that's why I really enjoy it.
No, I love that.
Amazing. So you have a wide range of things that you have interests, and it kind of covers the board, right? In academics and athletics and all of it. So let's go back to football for 1 second. So tell us about what your training was like to become an NFL player. So that sounds extremely intense. And what were some of your most memorable moments being an NFL player?
Hmm, that's a good question. I mean, when I was in college, I would say that's when I trained the most. um, I had medicine. I think that the hardest thing was basically to combine both, medicine and football from a schedule standpoint. Once I got to the NFL, the hardest thing probably became to transition from one to the other because you are an NFL player 6 months a year, and then you lose in the playoff, and then boom, you're a medical student. And that transition has always been quite hard. But in terms of like training and scheduling and combining both my passion for football and medicine, my 4 years at McGill were really hectic, to be honest.
This sounds that way. I can't
It
imagine.
does.
Yeah,
How
no, it
many
was.
times like were you working out? I mean, it must have been practicing every day or
Well, football, the good thing is that it doesn't last for a whole season, right? A season of football is like 8 to 12 weeks, and you
Hmm.
get training camps. So let's say like 3, 4 months of football when you're in college, and then it's mostly like off-season training. So like gym, running, physio, yoga, stretching, and I had to put on a lot of mass. So my training schedule was pretty intense, and my nutrition was also pretty intense because I put on like 60 pounds between the beginning
wow.
of college and the moment I got drafted. So yeah, put a lot of effort into that. But I mean, when at the end of the day, I felt also like I needed that in order to be a good medical student. Because initially, when I got to McGill, that's actually a good story. I stopped playing football because everybody was telling me like, Laurent, you got to choose. You cannot do both, right? It's going to be too hard. And I stopped football, and it lasted for like 2 months because I was missing it so much, but also because I was missing kind of that framework, that intense schedule that allowed me to like put
Mhm.
100% of my energy into like a bunch of small different things throughout the course of my day. I miss football, I miss my balance, and I went back to football, and then that's what I was like, you know what, whatever it takes, I'm gonna try to combine both without
Wow.
really knowing it was gonna I was gonna ended up getting drafted. But I put a lot of energy, I feel like, throughout those 4 years towards my training, towards medicine, and also a lot of sacrifices because that also means like not being able to go out with friends or spending less
Right.
time watching movie or Netflix
Absolutely.
or Facebook, which is probably a good thing at the end of the day. But like those 4 years were intense. And then when it comes to memories, I feel like it's easy to say like, oh, the best moment ever was winning the Super Bowl, and it's true. Like winning the Super Bowl is really
Yeah.
amazing, but all those little moments leading up to getting drafted. Like now that I'm retired, I feel like I have a different view on my career in a sense where like being in the NFL is just a straight up a privilege. Like it's amazing,
Mhm.
and I think what I remember the most and the moment that gives me chills the most are the little things. It's like when I was not invited to go to the combine in 2014. It's like 3 months leading up to the draft. It was like, this is it. Like, this is the gateway through the NFL. You got to go there, you got to perform. It's the objective way to compare like player from a physical standpoint. You run your 40-yard dash, bench press, that kind of stuff. And I didn't get invited. And my best friend, Sasha, who was my agent, burned 32 DVDs and sent it to all 32 team and invited them over to the first ever combine host in Canadian ground.
Whoa,
And
that's
9 teams
cool.
showed up, and it was just me, Sasha, and my family running a 40-yard dash that was going to define my life. Like that's those kind of moments are I think what I'm going to remember the most. And then the camaraderie, like playing with
Mhm.
53 other teammates in the locker room, learning how to win together, losing together, learning how to accept differences, because that's also what team sport is all about, especially in a country like the US where there are a lot of differences and different
Mhm.
background in the locker room. Like just learning how to interact with these guys, asking questions. I feel like I grew a lot in terms of yeah, just as a human being, more than just a football player. And that's what I'm gonna remember from my 9 years in the NFL.
Wow. Such a good time. Wow. I really love your point about camaraderie. You know, we're big about talking about community, so it's always something nice to hear you talk about and mention, because a lot of times, as much as someone could be motivated and they remember that in their own journey, they know what they're fighting for. Sometimes you can't do it all alone, right? Like it's nice to have other people who have very similar aspirations, similar values, and there's open mindset to kind of just learn with one another. So
Absolutely. And football is like the ultimate sport in regards to team chemistry because you have a defense and you have an offense, right?
mhm.
And you can lose a game 53-51 and you score like 8 touchdowns and it's not enough, right?
Right, right.
And you cannot start pointing finger because the next week the defense is going to save your ass. So like it's all about working together. And when you just look at
Exactly.
who's on the football field, you got 22 guys with 22 really different backgrounds and physical ability. Like I cannot throw a football. If I touch the football in a game, things really don't go well. Uh, but at the same time, Patrick Mahomes cannot protect like I do, and it's all about like working together and giving
Together.
credit to one another. And in
Yes.
that regard, I feel like you can learn a lot from football in term of yeah, just working as a team.
No, no, it sounds like you had a really wonderful 9-year career. And so now we're very curious to know what made you retire and transition to continue into your career in medicine.
I was getting old, man. Yeah, I mean, it's. I feel like it was the right time for me to retire, and
Yeah.
every year for the past like 5 years, I was writing down at the beginning of every season like what are the pros and cons of playing, and of course like the love of football is like the ultimate subjective thing that it's hard to like really know how much it's going to weigh in the balance, but the risk of injury every year they go up. At some point you
Yeah.
don't play really for the money because you do have some. So what do you play for? Are you playing because you love the sports? And my love for the sport is always going to be there. I just feel like the risk of injuries, feeling like also you're leaving behind a lot of project, whether it's with my foundation or my medical training. I was getting like a year behind every season, and at some point it was like, okay, well, you know what, I think I'm good now, and I went back and I played the 2021 season, and I got traded to the New York Jets. And honestly, I thought it was going to be it. Like I played the last 8 games of the season. I was really happy because I went back after being away from football for 18 months during the pandemic, and the year after that, I thought I was going to retire, and all of a sudden, I was at the hospital, and I was like, I want more. I want to be out there.
Wow.
I was watching
Wow.
football on TV, and I was like, it doesn't make sense. And I called my agent. I was like, try to find me a team, and we got an offer from the Jets. And the next day, I was back on a plane to New York, and I played the last 12 game or 10 game of the season. And after that, I was like, I'm good. Now I'm good. And honestly, it's a privilege in a year in a league where the average career is around 2 years, 2.3 years, I think. To be able to retire on your own term, I think makes it a lot easier to retire. You don't retire because of an injury or because you get cut. You retire because you're ready to move on, and that's
Right.
that's like a huge privilege. Um, yep.
No,
Wow, that is
absolutely.
quite a story. That's very cool. Um, so what do you think our message, what we're really trying to do here at Let's Move Canada is to inspire, Canadians nationwide to just be active, physically active and healthy, right? And wellness. So why do you think it's so important for people to be healthy and physically active?
Hmm. I think it goes way beyond, like, of course, like right now I'm working as a doctor at the hospital, right? Uh,
Hmm.
and what I see is really little injuries or musculoskeletal injury. What I see is diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia. Like those are all chronic disease that we can prevent by being active. And
Hmm.
that's the number one thing I prescribe my patient is like try to walk, try to get at,
Oh, amazing.
get out
Hmm.
there because it works, right? But that's like the medical side of things. But like as a kid, if you play a team sport or an individual sport, like what you can learn from those experiences, like learning how to win as a team, learning how to lose, learning how to work with different people that have different views on things, learning how to face adversity, to go like to sacrifice something for the greater good of an organization, of a team. Like that's something you don't learn in school, but it's going to translate so well into everything you do in your life after your sport or even while you're playing your sport. And I think that those are the things that sometimes we forget, I think. And on top
Hmm.
of that, you get all the mental health stuff. Like how much endorphin are you going to be able to have from going outside for a bike ride or a walk, and how much it's going to help you just better cope with your day and your stress and your daily life. I feel like exercise is actually the remedy for a lot of things. And then it's a question of like, why do you do it yourself? Like, why do you
Yes.
practice a sport you're practicing?
Hmm.
And for me, like my passion for football, the reason why I'm passionate for football kind of evolved as I grew up. Initially it was like the physicality of the sport and challenging channeling my excessive energy so I could be a better student in the classroom. And then at some point it's like just that strategic aspect of making rational decision in stressful environment. And then at some point it's just the the ability to be able to train and exercise in a supported environment with a lot of like nutritionists, coaches, and physiotherapists that are there to optimize your performance and
Hmm.
try to be the best player you can be with all the
Hmm.
resources available. Like for me, my motivation changed many times as my career went on. But at the end of the day, like asking yourself why you're doing what you're doing, and then just realizing all the positive impacts it can have on your life, way outside of the cardiovascular stuff, but the mental health, yeah, everything.
Hmm.
Just
So
learning how
many,
to
so
cope with
many good
life.
reasons, right?
Oh
Mental
yeah, big
health and
time.
interaction and how you get along with other people and overcoming adversity and just your general well-being, right? Cardiovascular. There's so many things.
And, and,
Because
and
I
also maybe
feel, sorry, go ahead.
if I can just add, I feel like you don't have to you don't have to practice sports in a competitive way to see all the benefit from
Right.
physical activity. I feel like we have a tendency to really encourage competition at a young age, and I'm not sure if I'm fully in favor of that. I feel like
Hmm.
uh, we should also show kids and even older people to practice physical activity for themselves and not necessarily to compete and to compare themselves.
Hmm.
And that's something that, I think we got to differentiate like sport in a competitive environment and physical activity in a well-being environment kind of deal.
Hmm. Right. Right. That makes sense. And because you're a doctor, I'm going to ask you this. When you say you see mostly diabetes and hypertension and these things, do you think it's more physical activity related or nutrition related?
I think it's everything. I think
All
it's
of it?
everything. I think
So combination.
yeah,
Hmm.
it's all the lobbying from the big soda company. It's like it's a lot of
Hmm.
stuff that
Hmm.
but things have to change. Things have to change in a big way because we cannot keep going on like this. Like you see the rate
Right.
of kid obesity, early onset cardiovascular disease, lack like sedentarity is a big issue as well. Like,
Hmm.
and I feel like we're diagnosing people younger and younger with chronic condition that they're going to end up living on longer and longer because life
Hmm.
expectancy is still going up, and we're
Hmm.
treating them with medication that are costing more and more money. So if you put
Right.
all that together, it's not sustainable.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. I was at a lecture last week and the doctor was doing a slideshow presentation and they said 40% of children are going to be pre-diabetic or diabetic in their adulthood. And I was like, that is an
That's a
insane
lot.
number, right? So things absolutely need to change.
No, for
Yeah.
sure. And I think one thing that I feel like a message that continues that you continue to put out is that even in combating sedentary lifestyles is to really find something that resonates with you when it comes to physical activity. It doesn't have to be a competitive sport or a sport. Like, it just has to be a physical activity, right? And I could use myself as an example. Since January, I've been able to maintain my New Year's resolution to work out more. And the one key difference is that I'm doing things that I like, right? And they're, it changes, the motivation changes, but it's easier to put in the discipline. So I'm excited to see what I can continue to do next. And while we're on that topic, we're very curious to know. We have one more question for you after this one, but what are your plans for the future? And do you have any hobbies outside of competition?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, right now I'm really dedicated towards my residency. I still have
Yeah.
18 months to go in my medical training in order to be a fully licensed physician. So that's taking me a lot of my time. But yeah, I mean, for me, sport and physical activity have been such a big part of my life and now I cannot just play football for fun after like a shift in the ER. So I gotta I gotta find other physical
Right.
activity that I enjoy doing. And right now I'm doing a lot of cycling. Like I got into
Okay.
cycling. For me, like it's a good sport because it's easy to put at different slot in my schedule. It's easily accessible. I'm able to like give myself 100% on the bike and then move on to another thing, and it lasts for like an hour. And I get the same sort of like endorphin rush that I would get from going to a football practice. So right now it's cycling. Maybe it's gonna evolve. Maybe I'm gonna go towards cross country skiing in the winter. But I'm
Right.
still in the process of like finding out what's going to be my active lifestyle as I retire because I don't you see I don't feel the same passion towards going to the gym as I felt when I was playing football. I feel like going to the gym now is associated with competition and football and putting 500 pounds on your back to squat, and I don't want to do that ever again, So now it's a question of like finding new activities. Yeah, and I'm in the process of doing that.
That's great. I love cross country skiing. I think it's
It's
so
a really
fun.
complete sport. Like you work everything from abs to upper body to
That does
lower
make
body,
sense,
and
right?
you're
Because
outside. So like
Yeah,
it's really a cool
exactly.
sport.
Exactly. So our last question for you is if you could change one thing about health and fitness in Canada, what would it be? It's a tough one.
I don't know. That's a really good one. Um, hmm, I don't know. I don't know. And I think I'm really biased by what I'm going through in the medical system right now. So when you say health and fitness, I'm thinking more health and fitness. But I feel like we need to maybe better we educate a lot of people and young kids specifically about the importance of being active, but I don't think we encourage them enough to find something that really um, belong to them, in terms of the choice of activity, and we keep implementing competition and at such an early age, and I don't think it's healthy. And I think we discourage a lot of kids of being active because we implement competition too early. And that's something that I think we need to change.
Mhm.
Uh, because at the end of the day, we're active because of all the things that it brings to us in terms of, cardiovascular, mental health, like just tools that you can learn in your life, but we're not playing our sport because of the competition aspect. Like people who are gonna live from their sport, it's such a small amount of people. Like I
Mhm.
don't think I don't think we need to put that much emphasis on competition.
No, I like that, and it's interesting because even as you're saying this, it continues to go back to what you've been saying since the beginning of this podcast, which is really find something that connects with, that you connect with, so that you know where you're going. And the earlier in life you do that, it's interesting to see how that's gonna positively impact the decisions that people make in terms of being active and eating healthy and doing all of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, I think there's a lot of barrier, like economical barrier to practice physical
Fair
activity
enough.
that we have to
Yeah.
remove. And I feel like, there's a lot of marketing around like sports. So like, you want to make, you don't want to play soccer, but you need the cleats, the little protection on your shin. You need this, you need that, you need the proper short.
And all that
And,
stuff.
and at the end of the day, you just need a football. That's what you need, And
Mhm.
I think we got to remember that, and we got to try to remove all the extra fluffy stuff so that kids can be active without having the financial burden of practicing their sport.
Love that. Well,
Yeah.
you guys heard it here first, guys. Thank you so much, Clément. Said
Uh,
Clément. Pardon.
Yeah,
Said
sorry,
Clément.
we
My
ended
gosh,
it.
thank you so much. Laurent. I'm just the French is getting so mumbled in my mind lately. I don't know what's been happening.
Luigi's
So
first language is French, so
yeah,
no way, for
but
real?
yeah, it is. So I
Nice.
was thinking, oh my gosh, maybe we should have just done this podcast, this balado. I almost called it balado in the beginning, and I thought, no, English.
English,
So
English.
yeah.
Are you guys gonna edit the whole thing a little bit or not
hmm
much? Yeah?
Yes.
Mhm.
Do you want me to
Absolutely.
redo the last question? Because I feel like I got you hanging a little bit, and I feel like I can do maybe a little better to
I
put
can
it
ask it
in the
again, no
positive.
problem.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Um, okay, so for our last question, we'd like to know if you could change anything in regarding health and fitness in Canada, what would you change?
I feel we just got to put more emphasis on it at all the different level, whether it's in, the familial household, at the government level, at the municipal level. I think we got to talk about it, which is what we're doing right now. But I think we also got to empower the kids to practice physical activity at a young age, and also to practice it in a non-competitive environment, because I think that's one of the key things that we're not doing really well right now. We're trying to compare everybody. We're trying to measure the outcome of everything. But at the end of the day, I feel like by doing that, we're also discouraging a lot of kids to be physically active. And that's the age where it really matters. If you implement a healthy lifestyle, whether it's diet, physical activity, at a young age, your outcome and your chance of still being active at 45, 65 go way up.
Mhm.
And I think we got to put a lot of focus on those kids.
Love
Absolutely.
that. Again, Dana, as we've been saying this since the beginning, the message continues to be the same. You find something that connects internally, and that allows you to stay on that journey to, one, make healthier decision when it comes to eating and exercising and everything.
You got it, man. Hey, thank you
All
so
right.
much for this
Of
opportunity.
Thank you so
course.
much.
Laura, it was such a pleasure. And we want to thank everyone for tuning into this episode. Again, we're your hosts, Dana and Luigi. And if you want to learn more about Laurent, please follow his Instagram at Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. So it's literally his whole name put together on Instagram. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Let's Move Canada. For latest updates, new podcast guests and everything, go to CHFI to see our mission. And don't hesitate to DM us if you need anything. Thank you so much, and see you next episode.
See you guys.